Logos. Every good team or league needs a good logo to represent them. This is just simple knowledge. Whether you do basketball, football, baseball, unicycle hockey, or ostrich racing, a strong symbol in bold colors is what helps you and your team stand out from the rest. It helps you find those cheering you on. While there's a wide variety of design styles between logos, especially amongst the teams of bigger leagues such as the NFL, NBA, and MLB, the one that usually comes to mind for many when it comes to sports logos is stuff like these. Sleek, sharp, colorful logos with bold text and illustration with personality. As logos and design as a whole has gotten, for better or worse, simplified, I feel like these logos have started to fall out of fashion a bit. But in recent years, they've started to make a comeback, especially in the gaming YouTuber and streamer scene, as well as the go-to aesthetic for many eSports teams. So let's say you, yes you, either want to learn how to design these kinds of logos, or you have been unfortunate enough to have that job thrown onto you despite not having any real experience with it. I've designed a small share of them in the past, one of which being a recent work which I will be using as an example across this video. So if you're looking for a place to start or just a few pointers, this might be a decent video to start from. Who knows? Once you've already sketched and laid out your design, the first big hurdle you're going to come across is trying to figure out the line work, especially if your main tool at hand is something like Adobe Illustrator at default settings. You don't exactly have much in the way of options. Mainly 3 pens and hopefully a good method of working around it. Because I'm sure you don't want to try making the lines yourself as objects, or grabbing that tablet and using the pencil tool. How I approach outlines for these types of logos isn't much different to how I approach mascot style designs that I also do in Illustrator. Mainly having a bunch of separate lines bunched together, converted into objects, and trimming everything so it can all look like one outline. But as a result, it does require a bit more work and patience. The arms here, especially the muscles, are made up of various lines, instead of just one. Not only does it make this look more stylized and dynamic in the final work, but I'm pretty sure the results of the line style, if it was all one stroke, probably wouldn't look as dynamic. Feel free to play with varying line weights, or keeping the weights a bit thin if you really want consistency, with some slightly thinner ones for small details, but don't go too overboard with them unless it's necessary to the design. Finally, by copying your finished work and combining all the elements together using the Pathfinder tool, we can make this into an outer black outline and put it behind a design to make everything pop and the design look a little more bold. Later on, to make it stand out a bit more, we're going to be putting a thinner colored outline behind that. Speaking of colors, colors are important, especially in the case of a logo, let alone one for a team. Because not only does a simple yet effective color palette make for a recognizable and engaging design, but what colors go into it are going to be the colors that represent not only your team, but their own uniforms, branding, merchandise, G Fuel bottles, I don't know. So fans can represent those colors, and so on. That's why many center around 1 or up to 3 central colors, excluding stuff like shading and lighting in the logo. Your logo should have at least 2 to 3 main colors. Depending on your design, this could even include black and white if you're using it for outlines and such. If you're planning to add extra details and shades, you can probably get away with between 6 or 7 in total, and depending on how well the palette comes together, you can get away with 10 at most. Any more would be way too much. Color and shade using your preferred method, with a similar mindset to simple or cell shading as if you were drawing traditionally. But depending on how well it can be used with the design, you can also get away with gradients, but don't get too detailed with those either. Lastly, we're going to talk about text, more so how to actually make it stand out and play a role in the design as a whole. This should be the last step of designing your logo, and while I can't exactly give you a full-on guide on the various ways you can use and prepare text to work in your logo, I can tell you what you should be looking for when working with it. The font choice itself should match the design, by which it should be something sharp and bold. Using more simple, clean, and traditional fonts like sans serif don't really combine with the design very well, as do non-traditional fonts like Wingdings or whatever this is. If you don't know where to start, I've actually linked 2 websites down below, one containing more sports-centric fonts and one containing more eSports-centric fonts. Either or works just fine. Integrating it into the design itself isn't that big of a task. It's actually quite simple if you just want to get it in there without doing anything fancy to it. We're going to be putting a bold black outline outside and behind the letters at around the same stroke width as we used for the outline surrounding the design itself, and then combining it all into one object using the Pathfinder tool and making it into a colored outline, like we also did with the design itself, aligning and placing it behind your work, which is now able to be considered finished. So, let's review. You figured out how to give your logo the bold, sharp, sleek look that many are known for. You now know what makes a good color palette, not just for the design itself, but what makes it functional for who or what it's representing. And finally, what makes a good font that fits well with the logo when adding the text of the team name. The sporty mascot logo style is not the easiest to get down from personal experience, but playing around with the tools at hand and a good amount of experimenting, as well as taking influence from existing logos and how they've evolved over time, from both the regular sport and eSports side of things, you'll definitely get better with a bit of practice. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you out in any way, let me know. Thanks for watching. I still don't know how to do a decent outro.